Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me in the locker room this evening. I'm Alan Locher. Tonight, we are looking back at Soap Opera Weekly, which began as a sister publication to Soap Opera Digest. Soap Weekly made its debut on the newsstands in November of 1989, and I believe the final issue was put out 23 years later in 2012. Joining us for the hour are an incredible array of writers and editors, some of whom first started off as interns at the magazine. And of course, leading the bunch is the one and only Mimi Torchin, who led the magazine for 11 years as founding editor-in-chief, where she also wrote a weekly critical column called Speak My Mind. Joining Mimi are managing editor Kate Walsh, news editor Gabby Winkel, and editors Jonathan Reiner, Mark McGarry, and Travis Kinsey. This incredible team will share some of their favorite memories and behind-the-scenes stories of putting this magazine together week after week. Please help me welcome them all to the locker room. Hello, 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 hello.
Greetings.
Hello.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us.
We're happy to be. Thank you for asking us.
My pleasure. Well, you know, the soap community loves your magazine, loves you, Mimi. And I'd love to start, Mimi, looking back, 11 years at the helm with this incredible team and so many others who we couldn't fit in tonight. So I apologize for those who were missing. What are you most proud of?
Well, I have a few things that I'm very, is that me? Do you hear a noise? Oh, okay. Anyway,
Somebody's phone, possibly.
There are a few things I'm proud of. It's hard when you start something from scratch and, then Hamlet for 11 years to not have several things. But one of the things I'm very proud of is that I created a family, that I had never been a boss. And I really didn't know anything about it except that I'd had bad bosses and I didn't want to be that kind of a boss. So I tried to make a situation where everybody would be happy. Nobody would be scared that they were going to lose their job every 5 minutes. We laughed all the time. Everybody worked really hard. And we're still together. No one hardly ever left. And it was really an achievement.
And you made a speech that it wasn't brain surgery, right? To everybody.
Yes. I think there were 4 or 5 of us at the beginning. It was absolute hell. I mean, I was hired in September, late September. I had Katie and Freeman Gunter and Buddy. We had the Star lent us a copy editor. Susan Rohal, my creative director. I think we had a photo editor. And that was basically it. I mean, maybe we had a news editor that wasn't Gabby yet. And it was crazy. It was madness. But, so we had this little group and I said, guys, this isn't brain surgery. We're doing a soap magazine. But in the context of what we're doing, not taking ourselves so seriously that everything is life and death, I want us to do the best job we can. I want to have a magazine that's filled with integrity, that is something we can all be proud of. We're not going to be a rag, even though we were on newsprint and we were a tabloid size. It was a hard sell to the soaps, I have to tell you, in the beginning. I had to talk to all the heads of daytime and all of the publicity heads. I don't know if I spoke to you, Alan, or not, but I had to sell us so that they would cooperate with us. And it took a little while to get things going. And I think that by and large, I said, we're going to be a T-shirt and jeans kind of place. I said, there's nobody looking over your shoulder and telling you how to dress. Do your job and everything will be fine. And that is basically what happened. We all had a really good time. It was hard work. I almost died by the time we put out the first issue because, we had to create everything. Right, Katie? Yeah. We had to create everything.
Yeah,
it was like being God, right? We had to name all the sections.
Well, yeah. Kate, would you talk? How did you and Mimi met long before Soap Weekly?
Not too long before, actually. I started at Sterling's just a year before. And
okay.
yeah.
Was it only a year before, Katie? It seemed
Yeah.
like we knew each other so much longer.
I know. No, it was just a year. It was June of '88. I just graduated from college and moved to New York from Michigan. And they gave me that cubicle over by the library and HR away from the rest of the soap editors. But you are next to me.
Yes,
And
I did a quarterly.
okay. So
And we bonded over tennis.
tennis and the Democratic Convention.
Right.
And I remember not talking to you at
And
first.
soaps, a little bit of soaps.
Well, of
Yes,
course,
of
soaps.
course.
Yeah, 'cause we were watching soaps on our TVs.
All the
I
time.
was in an office where I could watch soaps for a living. But then, the tennis would be on or the convention would be on. And Mimi'd be like looking over. What are you watching over there? Oh. So
Yes, I'm easily distracted.
Yeah, but then we started playing tennis together, I think.
It was great. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it was meant to you were meant to be side by side there.
Yeah.
Speaking of tennis, I wanted to tell you a story about the beginnings, because this is the only thing that I know that everybody else doesn't know. And I think they're kind of interesting stories. And I'm just going to tell you one or two. Speaking of tennis, when I was hired, I had my arm in a sling. I had a tennis and trigger finger I had operated on from too much tennis. And I went to my first meeting, all suits from Murdoch, the whole table full of suits, and Meredith Berlin. And they started talking about what they were going to do and this and that and the other. And at some point, I noticed that no one had mentioned Staples for the magazine. And I raised my little hand, not the one that was hurt. And I said, "Excuse me, are you saying we're not going to have Staples in the magazine?" And they said, "You don't need Staples. The Star doesn't have Staples." I said, "Well, we're not the Star. We're supposed to be a magazine that has to work with an industry that's very, protective of itself. And I think we need Staples. What do they cost? A penny for 100? I mean, They said, no, we don't need Staples." The issue came out and literally in 2 ways flew off the stands. We didn't have any ads for us, nothing. They just threw us out there and we sold like hotcakes. But we also, the pages fell out of the pockets because there were no Staples. And the next week we had Staples. And the moral of that story is they should have always listened to me, because even though I had never run a magazine, I had pretty good instincts about things, especially knowing we needed Staples. So that was sort of a behind the scenes, way in the beginning thing.
I love that. Well, I'd love to learn from all of you, or hear from all of you what you learned from Mimi and what working at the magazine meant to each of you. Jonathan, if you want to start.
Oh my God. I learned how to write. I learned how to edit myself and others. I learned how to conduct myself professionally. I learned, don't laugh.
No, you did.
I learned about the business. Mimi and Gabby and Katie and Linda Sussman and Irene were older than us. So there was the under 25 crowd and the over 25 crowd. And yeah, we were watching soaps and interviewing actors, but we were learning how to be professionals in the media world. And, Alan, I don't know that you ever came up to our old office on 25th Street, but it was a big open newsroom like you would see in movies and television. And there was no voicemail. There was a switchboard in the building next door to us, which was Digest. So we didn't even have a direct line out or in. So we were picking up each other's phones. And while Mark and Travis and all the other interns and I were growing up and becoming professionals, we had a family there in Mimi and Gabby and Katie and Linda and Irene. And it was really just a magical place when there were, 6 or 7 soaps in New York. You couldn't walk down the street without seeing a soap actor. And it was just really something special.
Travis?
I would say, learned so much from Mimi. The one thing that comes to mind is I learned how to take the job seriously without taking it seriously. Like, as Mimi said, we had a weekly magazine to get out every 7 days, and we couldn't be messing around too much because the pages had to get out. But there were tons of laughs, tons of fun jokes, tons of stories. Mimi made it. Many of us started as interns. Myself, Mark, Jonathan, Lara, Tanya. So many people started as interns. But under Mimi, there was no such thing as the lowly intern, quote unquote. She treated us all, and truly did value our opinions, treated us all as if we were just as much of the team as people who maybe had been there longer. When I was there maybe a month or two, and Katie and Mimi were talking, and Gabby were talking about a possible cover line for an All My Children cover. And it was the week that Erica had her pill addiction and they were having an intervention. And this little intern from Ohio, I meekly, poked my head around the corner and suggested a cover line for the cover, which was Do or Die, that was the week that, you don't get off the drugs and it's all going to hell. And they accepted it and they used it on the cover. And I was shocked and quite grateful that, this is the environment that Mimi let us all play in. Yes, it was work, but there wasn't a day that went by that we didn't laugh heartily.
That's hard to say in jobs, so that's a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember Susan Rojo, my creative director, was the only one with weekly experience. She came from the Star. She's a very talented, wonderful person. But one day she came to me and she said, Mimi, there are too many Indians here and not enough chiefs. Because she says, everybody has an opinion. I said, yes, everybody has an opinion. She says, but you listen to them all. I said, yes, I listen to them all. We're a team. Everybody has good ideas. Everybody gets to say what they think. We don't do it all the time. But anyway, I just remember her saying there are too many Indians and not enough chiefs.
That's funny, but people do have smart ideas. People just have egos that let the ego get in the way of listening to those ideas, sadly. Mark?
I learned everything I know from Mimi. I mean, everything I know, everything I took into my current job, and it all goes back to Mimi and how to act, how not to act. And the thing about Mimi, which is brilliant, is she was the boss, but I never felt uneasy around her or nervous around her. Like I've had a lot of bosses over the years that there's always that tension, but Mimi was a friend, a mother figure, and she really taught me everything I know now. I don't think I would have the career I have now if I didn't learn what I did from Mimi. I honestly don't think so.
I love that.
I owe a lot. I owe you a lot, Mimi.
Gabby?
Well, I also learned a lot from Mimi. And Mimi was, I don't know if we said this, a really great writer. Her column was talked about. It took
talked about, Gabby,
Still, it took the soap seriously. I mean, she loved the medium. We never made fun of it. We treated it with respect. We treated the actors with respect because they worked harder than many other actors. And it was that, and she had a wonderful critical eye. I mean, really, she hit some hard issues in her column, and she came up with ideas. And sometimes it was hard to, what a dud week, nothing's happening. How are we going to put together a cover? And then we would look around at the storylines and think, well, maybe we can put these three together. And of course, we always prayed for a really good casting bit. Prayed for it. But
on a Thursday.
Right, always on a Thursday or a Friday morning, very early.
We had it covered by Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, but we could change a line if it was big enough. But it was really always a lot of fun because we loved the soaps. I mean, there would be some weeks when there was like a sweep storyline, people would be watching their television and crying. Because we really, we're passionate. And of course, it is great fun to have a TV in your office.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Kate?
I mean, I just feel like I'm going to echo everybody else, but I think Mimi taught me how to be a great boss. I sat right opposite her, and she would always say, "You're my right-hand person. I mean, really, you're like right here at my right hand, and Freeman's my left-hand person." And she just always gave me so much credit. Like whenever anybody came into the office, an executive or Mrs. Murdoch, and she's like, I don't know, ask Katie. She's the brains around here. I would be nothing without Katie. And I was just like, wow, like, you know, I was like 23 years old when we started. It was nuts. And Travis or Jonathan, yeah, I think when the over 25 crowd, I was like 26 when you guys were like, you can't be part of my crowd. But yeah.
It's so interesting about the soap industry, what you're all describing, Soap Weekly, hiring interns who went on to get jobs. So many people on my side, on World Turns and Guiding Lights production teams, started as interns, working their ways up to, you know, stage managers, directors, writers, all of the above. And I think it is that passion for this genre that drives interns to do so well and thrive into a full-time position. Kenneth Wirt says, hello, fellow weekly friends. Gabby is the reason why many of us got started in our careers. She hired the interns and Weekly treated the interns as equal. Most hired from being interns. Speaking of Mimi, this comes from Robert Reed. First and foremost, when I think of icons or trailblazers and those who shaped me to be who I am today, she comes to mind. With her creation in Soap Opera Weekly, along with many others, the magazine gave me that special bonding time with my mother and my grandmother. We had the subscription weekly, even in tough times. We still managed to have it and looked forward to it, and she piqued my interest, strengthened my vocabulary and reading skills. Even though I know the form could be risque at times, still it created conversations with my mom and grandmother who explained what things meant, and to her critical acclaim and many others the courage to think about the form seriously. I will never forget how much that meant to me even 35 years later after that magazine came out. It still creates a special place in my heart, and no matter where I'm going or what lies ahead in this crazy journey called life, I'll never forget those special memories she and her team brought to a young guy. Love to Mimi and for creating such warm memories for me in the process of growing up. Warmest gratitude and love to her, and not to forget her other half.
Thank you, Robert. Love you. That's a wonderful thing to say. It's what we tried to do. You know, we didn't talk down to anybody. We respected our fans. We respected the industry. We fought for it. I would call out many public figures for making fun of the soaps in my column. And I remember Cokie Roberts once said something derisive about the soaps, and I called her out in my one of my speaking my minds. And there was a show. She was whoever it was she was working with said something about the soaps, and she says, "No, we don't do that anymore. We don't say bad things about the soaps." And that was very important to us.
Well, I want to read one more. So this one comes from Cristiano Massari. I love the Soap Weekly covers. The weekly editorial features by Mimi were my favorite. I love the writers who are here today. I was a subscriber from 1996 to 2008 from Italy and purchased back issues from 1989 to 95. Mimi was my idol. She was deeply professional and serious in analyzing the soap industry. She had a critical and sociological approach. I remember some most memorable issues, 100 best soap moments, most beautiful people. I still keep copies of the magazine. In Italy.
Beautiful.
That's stupendous.
Ciao.
It's incredible that the impact the magazine had across the globe, truly. We lost two of your former colleagues early this year, Kaylee Haynes and Robert Shork. Would some of you share your favorite memory? Raise your hand if you want to go first, or Jonathan?
Well, Robert started off as an intern also, and then went on to do other things before he came back to the magazine. And that just goes to echo what everyone has said about, like, even if you were with us for a moment, you were family. That's the way that we treated you. Robert was so brilliant and ahead of his time in terms of what he was doing as an intern before the internet. And I don't know that his news gathering abilities get enough credit, because nowadays with the internet, news is easy to find. And Kaylee, I knew about from her byline, and she had done an under 5 on Guiding Light that I thought was like the most fantastic thing in the world. And I'll let other people talk about Ryan or Rybeth and all that.
Yeah, I'd like to go. What I remember about Robert, one of the funniest images is when Josh Ryan Evans would come up to the office.
Oh, yes.
And they were good friends. And Robert was like 6'7". And, you know, Josh was much smaller. And I remember them going shopping at Duane Reade. And Josh's mom said, I love shopping with the two of them because Robert can get things from the top shelf and Josh can get things from the bottom shelf.
That's great.
And there was Kaylee, of course. She was a single mom, and we all helped raise her baby. Like, she would come into the office when we were closing the magazine in her stroller asleep. And I think Travis was what?
On the floor, a blanket on the floor.
Yeah, and Travis was like her contact, like for daycare or the babysitter. Like, you'd get a call, like at the newsroom. Oh, hi. But no, I mean, definitely like family. And it's just they both are gone much too soon. And we do a couple of Zooms a year. And we did one. I went to both of their funerals and came back and we did a Zoom and we reported, I told everybody about it and their families joined us too for the Zoom.
Oh, that's so sweet. I love that.
Yes, it was amazing.
Love
yeah,
that.
they were both wonderful. Go ahead. Sorry.
So, just to echo what everyone has been saying, during the pandemic, we started regular Zooms that we have where, it started on Cinco de Mayo. Please don't ask why.
It's a long story.
But we Zoom regularly. And, it's been more than 30 years and we still can fall back into the same relationships. And that just speaks to the environment that Mimi created, that our coworkers who we worked side by side with became family. Whether it's, Robert's sister and Robert's cousin, or, Kaylee's daughter and her mother and her sister, even it doesn't matter if you just crossed our door and left, you're our family.
Yeah. The pandemic definitely made us all realize who the important ones were, and by scheduling that Zoom, you're showing each other you matter. Somebody just wrote, why is Travis Kinsey so handsome? Elizabeth Kinsey.
Oh, thank you, honey. I love you too. If I can, Alan, to address with regard to Kaylee and Robert.
Yeah.
With Robert, I will tell a story that I feel quite confident that if he were here, he would have told himself. It's a great story, and it's one that people get a kick out of, especially GH fans. So Robert loved GH. His love of GH went back to the glory days of the show in the 80s. He had an email address that was dukelavery@aol.com, back when we all had AOL. His license plate was DVX. Fans of the show will get this. And he told us this story once where he woke up one morning, this was in 2012, to find a voicemail from Anders Hove, who played Cesar Faison on GH. Anders lives in Denmark, and he was calling Robert because he needed, quite frantically, Robert to fax him articles that Robert had done with him in his previous stints on the show, because GH was looking to bring him back, and the lawyers at ABC, to get him a visa to come over to the U.S. to work, needed some kind of proof that Anders was the only person who could play this role. So Robert went down into his storage unit, dug through his boxes, pulled out the magazines, faxed these articles over to Europe. And if memory serves, I think from the time that Anders called him to the time that he was on the GH set taping was less than a week, because they needed him pretty quickly. This is when they brought him back in 2012 when he was impersonating Duke and all of that. And so Robert was tickled pink to find a voicemail from Cesar Faison on his answering machine, as was I, because Robert and I shared both a love of Faison and a love of the late Peter Jennings from ABC News.
Interesting duo.
No, I don't think there was any correlation, but As for Kaylee, yes. I mean, she was there when I started in 1996. And after my internship ended, before I was brought on staff a couple of months later, she made calls and got me an interview over at Soap Opera Update in New Jersey, where I was for about a month and a half before I got the fateful call from, I think it was Freeman who placed the call on my answering machine, asking if I wanted to come back on staff at Weekly, which of course was a no-brainer. But as Jonathan mentioned, we're all still family. Kaylee's daughter, Rybeth, will be here in Dallas in our home next month as she passes through for an event. I mean, it just doesn't end. And like, I would challenge most people in America are not getting on Zooms with Larry from the mailroom from their job 30 years ago. Yet we do, because we're family and we love each other. And it's Jonathan used the word magic. I mean, Mimi created a magical environment to not only work and learn, but to care about each other and enjoy being there.
I want to say something about my staff and these people. I couldn't have done what I did without, in any way. You of course can't do anything without a staff. Katie did all of the scheduling. She did all of the nitty-gritty behind the scenes stuff so that I could be creative. Creativity was my thing. I was not, although I learned a lot about the business. I had to. I went to business meetings. I fought for paper that was better than the crappy paper we had. But I couldn't have done it without Katie. And these editors are the most dedicated people I have ever known. And they really didn't need to be told anything. They just did their jobs. I remember Jonathan sitting at his desk proofing with his hands over his ears because the cacophony in the office with everybody listening, to televisions, and especially at 25th Street, we would just yell across the office. We didn't have time, especially when there were 5 of us. We just had to, where's the, that was how we ran the magazine the first 6 months or so. It was just, it was madness. And this staff, nobody ever left. And it was just, they were the best people you could ever have hoped to have. And I was just lucky. They came on as interns. I said, love this person, let's hire them. Love this person, let's hire them. And it was fabulous. Gabby was the best news editor. She loved the police blotter. That was my favorite thing when someone committed some kind of a crime. And Gabby would call the police stations and talk to the captains and the arresting officers. It was hilarious.
I don't remember that much of that.
Yeah.
I do remember police blotter. I don't remember anything that was in the blotter, but I remember
there were things. We tried not to be gossipy, but there were things, and you had to do something. What in the book?
You're going to write about it in your book. She always said that.
I didn't write about anything in my book, but Robert was to me a soulmate, and he did something so monumental for me. He created the most convoluted, difficult, crazy, month-long April Fool's joke on me, to the point that it culminated in an editorial meeting. I remember Francesca James was there. She had been interviewed for the 25 most influential people in soaps. And she came into the meeting, they told her it's going to be something special. And the reveal happened by something I read. It's too long to go into it. And I remember looking up and going, you mean none of it was real? None of it was real. And Robert mostly was the one who did it, because a few people said, I don't know, he was going to get mad. I don't know why they thought I was going to get mad. It was brilliant. And it took a whole month, and they fooled me. And that was Robert. Robert put his heart into everything he did. And Kaylee was like one of my babies. She was like a child.
Well, I think you all put your heart into everything you did. And speaking of heart, the fans always talk about the covers. And Michael Howland says, what goes into choosing a cover? Was there any pressure that you had to feel balanced to the other shows? And it's basically what sold, correct?
Yes, but we were probably the only people for several years that ever had a loving cover, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Loving.
We made sure that everybody got a cover. Now, I have to admit, Guiding Light was my favorite soap, and maybe they got a couple more covers than everybody else. I tried to be balanced, but we would pick a cover by what was the most interesting thing going on. And we did some very controversial covers. We did a Twin Peaks cover that did not sell very well, but Twin Peaks was hot and we wanted to do it. We did a voting cover.
Yes.
The front was the people from New York, I think it says
LA.
and then we had the California people, or vice versa, and says, and so are we, and so should you. And I remember getting a letter from someone that said, if I want to read about politics, I'll get Time magazine. Not everybody was always happy with everything. We did a rape cover, but mostly we did pretty people and good stories.
And we showed somebody's nipple once on the cover, I think.
Maureen Garrett, one of my best friends, we did a cover with her and Roger, and everybody swore that her nipple was showing. It was a gowny dress. And I kept saying, it's not her nipple. It went on for days. And it
more than days. More than days.
Years, probably. It's not her nipple. And
I loved booking covers with Soap Weekly because they just had more space to be more creative. One of my favorite photographs of Benjamin Hendrickson, Michael Park, Annie Parise, and Maura was on the cover of I think it was a collage of World Turns. It was just a great shot we did. Here's Jonathan. This is a behind the scenes.
Alan. Wait,
this is a behind the scenes
about this.
I love it.
Behind the scenes, and this was the cover.
So there's a joke. There's a practical joke story about this. So if I remember correctly, Molly convinced Holden that she was pregnant because she faked a urine test, and I don't remember the sequence of events, but Mimi probably said something like, "We're not going to show the urine on the cover, right?" We get to Robert.
I don't remember that.
We get to Robert Malazzo's studio, and we fill a cup up with what looks to be urine and take pictures and then show Mimi. And I think we said Alan wants them to use the shot with the urine.
I'm sure I went ballistic.
Probably. Do you all have a favorite?
Well, I was thinking about it on my way over, and I thought it really has to be the shot from All My Children where we had the dog on the cover. We had Harold the dog with
Robin Mattson and James
Kybird, because the dog, they got the characters were going to get married, and the dog comes in and breaks up the wedding because he's got I believe, a pill bottle in his mouth.
Yes.
And that was a really fun cover.
I love the first cover, Duke Dies. I mean, that sealed it for me. I saw that cover.
First cover?
Duke Dies. The first
Duke
cover.
Dies.
That wasn't the first cover, I don't think, but it was a very early cover. The first cover
Ian
was,
Buchanan's Duke Lavery?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But
It was the other one.
It was Greg Beecroft.
Greg Beecroft.
But the first cover, wasn't it?
It was Marina.
Days.
Bye Bye Days. Marina dumped by.
Yeah.
No, Bye Bye Marina. Hello, dumped by Days.
Yeah.
And already someone called. They were going to sue us. I mean, from the first cover,
And then A. Martinez and Marcy Walker were on the
second cover, and I stayed at the office on like a Wednesday night till 8:30 or 9 o'clock while they decided, because remember, we were new. Nobody was quite sure how they could trust us yet. And I waited for that cover. They broke up, and I remember we made a break in the cover, waiting to find out if we were going to have a cover the second week. And I think they said yes, and I think that they had to FedEx it to us. I don't even think we did things digitally yet then.
No.
And it was the early weeks were like that. I mean, we had to borrow pictures from the digest, and Meredith Balloon I adore. She's a good friend of mine, but she got me hired, actually. She interviewed me and got me, but she was not happy about having to share photos. We were a threat, and she was right. Not that anybody could threaten the digest, But I have a really interesting story that I will tell very quickly. Soap Opera Weekly was not meant to last more than a few months. I didn't know that. I hired people away from jobs. I did not know that the reason Soap Opera Weekly was started was because Murdoch had bought Digest for $10 million, and a few months later found out that American Media was going to do a weekly tabloid-sized magazine. And Digest didn't want to go weekly. Meredith wanted to, what was successful. She wanted to keep what was successful. And so they started weekly to get the pockets, to discourage American Media. And we were supposed to be gone after American Media, maybe wasn't going to do Soap Opera Magazine. But we were so successful that they couldn't get rid of us.
Because of all of you here.
Everybody, it was something, nobody ever had something they could pick up and read about what they were watching. We created news. I had to be a news magazine to differentiate us from Digest. We made the form. You talk to a writer about the storyline. Our first issues had 3 pages of news. Later on, we had 10 and 12 pages of news. It's what everybody wanted to do. And there was no news in soap operas before we came along.
Well, speaking of trust, Jill Laurie Hurst says, actors loved talking to Weekly. They trusted Mimi. Great group of people worked at that magazine. Anybody else have a favorite cover?
Well, I have.
Travis?
So as I'm reading the magazine as a high school and college student, I was just blown away by every single cover was artistic. It was,
Susan was brilliant.
Yeah, and I also we have to give a shout out here to Patty Carroll, our photo editor, who
Oh my God, I haven't heard that name in a while.
Yeah,
I love Patty.
She was a great photo editor.
And getting everybody together. The 2 covers that come to mind that I remember seeing from when I was in college. One was a Guiding Light cover. And it was Peter Simon, Melissa Hayden, Morgan England, I think. And the cover line was For Pete's Sake. And it was when there was a custody battle over baby Peter. And it was just so dramatic. And another one also involved a child. It was a GH cover with Jackie Zeman, Brad Mall,
Sharon Wyatt.
Thank you, Sharon Wyatt and John Riley, when they were fighting over Lucas. But I mean, every single cover that comes to mind, it wasn't your normal magazine. It was done with an extra bit of reverence for the genre and interest in making it as interesting as it could be for the reader.
And humor too.
Almost every cover line. And the staff was very generous to let me sort of have my way because I had a million references. I was except for Linda, I was the oldest person there. So
one of my favorites.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I don't remember that one.
The Clone.
And the Blackout.
Oh
Blackout.
God, yes.
That was Friday Night Blackout. That was one of my favorite covers.
Somebody actually, one of the fans commented, said that was their favorite.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I loved Who Killed
Who
Will.
can tell us about this cover?
Who?
Alan.
This was Jonathan.
Who made that for you, Jonathan?
Oh, we all did.
Wow. This is when I left to go to TV Guide in '98. That was one of the traditions that when you leave, I don't even know if Colleen has seen that. That was one of those. When you would leave, they would send you off. Oh, we would also do for family events a cover. You know, it's funny because the covers were so iconic, so it was an honor to have a cover done for you when you left.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. Susan Rohal had already designed the magazine before I was hired. She already had the cover design for the magazine, the logo, and that's what we started with. But about a year into it, maybe, she said, I have something to show you. And she brought me our first bleed cover, where the main picture bled through the whole cover, and the side stories were inserts. It wasn't broken into. And I think I started to cry. It was so fabulous. And we almost did always bleed covers from then on. And they were very dramatic. And we had great photographers. And we were serious. We had shitty paper. Oh, terrible paper. Excuse my French. We were on newsprint. I fought counts, but we overcame it. We had a great business guy. Our color guys, Bill. They took so much care so that we could do the best we could with what we had to work with, and our covers were spectacular. I have to agree.
But some of them also, I mean, I think they all had like serious art direction.
Yeah.
Like I remember Who Killed
Totally, Susan was genius.
The Puppet Master with Sammy and, you know, the marionettes.
Genius, absolutely genius. And we came up with these covers together, and Susan figured out how to do it. You know, she figured out how to do it, and it was sometimes not easy. We wanted something. The Who Killed Will
Yes.
is probably, it was our best-selling cover, I think, ever.
Really?
And
Wow.
yeah, it was first of all, it was a very big story, and we had the idea to try to have everybody from the show, because nobody knew who had killed Will. We had 15 minutes. The publicists got together. I think it was Sally then, was it? Anyway, got together everybody, including Susan from the show. The costume designer dressed them all in trench coats. I remember Kelly Ripa brought a Barbie doll dressed in a trench coat that she held up. And I had the idea to have everybody point at somebody else. We had 5 or 6 or 7 takes, and then everybody had to leave. That was it. We had 15 minutes to do this cover. And I remember telling Susan, I want a drop of blood on one of the letters. And she, of course, did that. And it was a it's in your montage, the Who Killed Will cover. And it was, I believe, our best-selling cover ever.
Now, Mimi, how did it happen that ABC then used that artwork in bus and subway ads? Because back, not for weekly, but they used it as a promo.
Yeah, I remember that.
I don't remember, but they probably had to buy it from the photographer.
Yeah, but I mean, so that one, they were also, I don't know if it was that exact shot, but you couldn't walk down the street or go into the subway in Manhattan without seeing that cover image.
Wow, I don't remember
That is a lot of people to wrangle.
Yes.
Yes, and they were fabulous, and they knew they didn't have much time, and they did everything we asked of them, and we got a smashing cover that ABC then stole from us.
That's crazy.
It was great. Cover shoots were fun. Sometimes we had some problems. Sometimes someone didn't want someone to be the center of attraction in a red dress and refused to shoot the cover if they didn't get a red dress. But we did manage to get past that at some point. And there were some incidents with covers. But most of them were brilliant.
Mark, would you share your Cynthia Watro scoop that you beat out Michael Logan on?
Oh, I was pretty competitive, and I remember being at the studio one day, and Cynthia was shooting, and she was leaving the show, and it was you forbidden us to talk to Cynthia about leaving the show because it was a Michael Logan exclusive, and I just started talking to her, and I got one sentence out of her about leaving, that she's going to miss the show, and we went with it in what was Revolving Door,
Yeah.
about leaving the show, and Alan and Lisa, I think, went crazy because it ruined Michael Logan's.
I have no recollection.
I didn't care. And Michael and I became friends, and we're good friends, and he respected me for it, I think, in the end. But that was fun.
They were news hounds. Mark was a good news hound. Gabby, they were all very, very. We never could break things that we weren't allowed to do, but we managed to make. I think we sort of created the spoiler, but not a bad one, because we didn't want to ruin. I mean, I hated knowing what was going to happen 2 weeks in advance. I hate spoilers, but we sort of created them, I think. And
Alan, can I just say something? Mark and I had like the best life in the 90s. I mean, yeah, we had to go out and get the milk for the coffee. And if Paul Roush called, Mimi's assistant would take a message. But,
bound issues.
But we got to do things as kids that you really can't believe now. We got, Mimi and Gabby and Katie and Linda let us interview whoever we want. And, we worked really hard, but actors trusted us the same way like that Cynthia was there and spoke to Mark. Roush took us out to the pond. Do you remember when Roush took us to the pond, Mark?
Yeah. He was great.
And I also want to say that, Gabby was the intern director back in the day, and she would throw you into the deep end and put you on on my first day, you put me on the phone with Sharon Farrell. And Mimi set this environment where, hey, you're going to start working on your first day, so you got to be professional. And I want to make sure that we recognize that Gabby was also there, making sure that the interns got heard, that the publicists knew who we were. And we had to go out and get the milk. And Mark and I were always running on errands. And I mean, it was a different time. We would disappear for hours. And
but you always finished your work.
Yes, but we would still do our work.
Well, you had deadlines for
Yes.
sure. I'd love to know everybody, some of your favorite interviews and who some of the folks you didn't get who you would have loved to have sat down with. Kate, do you want
Joan
to?
Collins was my favorite.
Joan was your favorite, Mark?
Joan Collins, when she joined Guiding Light briefly as Alexandra. Went to lunch with her, and she was fabulous.
That's a good lunch.
Everybody was a great writer, by the way. That's why they got to write.
Yeah.
Also,
Kate,
well, Gabby, you go.
no, Gabby, you go.
I remember, and once when and I know Mark has spoken to him too, but when Aaron Spelling was going to do Sunset Beach, and I got on the phone with Aaron Spelling, and I thought, oh my God, he's asking me questions.
It was wonderful.
For suggestions. He was really such a great guy. So he was a really good, I enjoyed talking to him. A lot of the head writers could be really fun to talk to.
Anyone in particular?
Well, I really liked Ron Carlovati. I liked him a lot. I liked Megan McTavish. They would be fun. Lorraine Broderick was always good. She was always, and the thing is, a lot of them, you knew they would call. When the publicist said, oh, they'll call you sometime this afternoon, you knew they would call. So you weren't just waiting and waiting, because there would be some like that. But
I got to do a lot of really big stars, and they were all wonderful. I just have to say that. But the one interview that I wanted that we couldn't get was when, oh my God, I can't remember her name. An older actress who was on Brideshead. She was on As the World Turns. Do you remember?
Claire Bloom.
Claire Bloom and Charles
Keating
were both in soaps, and they had been on Brideshead together. And I begged the publicist, I probably begged you, they wouldn't do it. I wanted to do an interview with both of them called Brideshead Revisited. And they just wouldn't do it. I was very disappointed. I thought it was a great idea.
I wasn't there, I think, when Claire was there, but I loved her. My God, Elena was great.
So amazing.
Fabulous.
Yeah, I really enjoyed interviewing like Hillary B. Smith and Catherine Hickland, and just going out to lunch with them just for an interview and just spending 3 hours there. Nathaniel Marston and Kathy Breyer.
Kathy Breyer, yeah.
That was a really popular interview because they had such a strong following. And I'm still friends with their fan club, president. And we just, became friends because of the article I wrote. But she came up with I think we got the idea to interview them to do a story. And they weren't even very hot yet. But then there was this fan following, and I forget, it was something corner. It was like wherever they had lunch in the show, it was like that Luncheonette's Corner was the name of this column. And I'm like, wow, people are talking about this on AOL or whatever it was then. And I'm like, let's just do an interview with them. And it just blew up. And then their storyline got bigger. So that was really fun to see it kind of work out like that.
Travis?
Well, and also I'll tell two quick stories. There are two sides of the same coin. Going back to what Mimi said about, probably the only magazine that had a loving cover. I covered Port Charles for the entire run of the show. And as Mimi knows, I campaigned hard to get that show coverage, to get it on the cover. We had, I think we probably did 1 or 2 or 3 Port Charles covers, which for what the show was entirely fair. And I have to say, that entire cast was awesome. They always were willing to get on the phone, always willing to talk about the show. I was walking across the lobby of the Plaza Hotel one year at Emmy time, and coming from an Emmy event or going to an event, minding my own business, and I hear my name yelled from across the other side of the lobby. And I turn around, and there's John Lindstrom, who to this day, I will say, is one of the nicest, forget actors, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Just a classy, nice guy. And that whole cast at Port Charles was just phenomenal. The flip side, I'll tell a story where I won't ID the actor, but people will still get a kick out of this. Early in my time in soap journalism, I interviewed an actor. He was not on a soap at the time, but he had been part of a very popular couple in the 80s. And I interviewed him because he was doing a primetime TV movie, and he wanted to promote the movie and talk about what other projects he was doing. So I interviewed him, and after we got done talking about the movie, he launched into a profanity-laced tirade about the executive producer of his former soap. Just went off on this person. And after he was done, he took a minute and he said, "Wait a minute, what was your name?" And I said, "Travis Kinsey." He said, "Your name isn't familiar. Have you been in the business for a long time?" And I said, No. I've only been doing this a few months." And he said, "Okay, well, I just want to be clear. Everything I just said about my producer is off the record. You do know what off the record means, don't you?" And I just took a minute and I said, "Yes, I absolutely know what off the record means. I give you my word. This part of the interview will not appear in the story." And then when I hung up, I experienced something that I'm sure we have all experienced. I discovered that the tape recorder hadn't worked. And the entire interview, both the stuff I could use and the stuff I couldn't use, was gone. So I had to very quickly recreate from memory the quotes that I could use, because this was an actor. Some actors, if something like that happened, they'd be kind enough to get back on the phone for 10 minutes and give you the quotes again. This guy, it wasn't happening. And so I had, I've only been doing this a couple of months, and I was panicking that I just interviewed this big star and then I lost his interview. But but by and large, and I know everyone here will agree, 99% of the actors we worked with were phenomenal. I mean, they just were happy to talk, happy to promote their shows. We, as Jonathan said, we got to play in a playground. All of us, Alan, yourself included, I know, we're fans before we worked in the industry professionally.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we got to play in this world where we had, watched it on TV, and now we're getting to work at covering this industry, and it was phenomenal. It was the time of a lifetime.
Were there actors that you were intimidated by or afraid of when you first sat down?
I was probably afraid to interview Roush. I think that Paul Roush. I think the first time I got on the phone with him was when he was still at Santa Barbara, and the NBC affiliate in Boston was dropping Santa Barbara. So they did a remote in Boston to get to sort of spur interest. And he wasn't happy with the article or something, but it wasn't so much nervous for me, but it was more like I felt like I want to be able to ask them the questions, like to do Mimi justice, to do the magazine justice, to do things the right way. I didn't want to just blubber and be like, "Oh my God, I love you. You're so fantastic. How are you so fantastic?" each and every time. I remember, we had to go over our interview questions, first for news stories and then for features with Mimi and Gabby and then Linda, because you really wanted to make sure that you were asking the right questions. So we were too well prepared to be afraid, but there was a really high level of journalistic integrity that Mimi had set up for all of us to meet.
We weren't really a fan magazine, though we were for the fans. We were an industry magazine. And That was what our news was. And we did like 3-page interviews, big interviews, big stories. And I remember again, Susan, my art director, because you always come from your own point of view, saying, there's too much type on this page. Cut some type, we need some pictures. I said, no, we're not a picture book. You know, these are serious interviews. I'm not making room for a big picture in the middle of an interview. The readers are smart enough not to get bored if they read something interesting. They don't need a picture to break up the page. And that was kind of a little thing we always had.
Robert was a great writer. I mean, his interviews were long, but he was
Robert
probably the best writer in the business next to Mimi.
Phenomenal. Oh, I think he was better than I was. I don't know. He was phenomenal.
No.
You were all good writers. And, you know, we paid our interns for their stories. That was how we managed to get interns paid. Because usually interns are unpaid slaves. And I said, the way we can get around this is when you write we'll pay you. We paid them a lot, $100, $150, $50 for a small.
It was a lot back then.
Yes, and that was how we managed not to take advantage of them. Besides teaching them the ropes, they got paid. And everybody got a byline. If you look at some of the other magazines in those early days, people didn't get bylines.
Well,
but
Mimi, do you remember
that people know? Yes.
No, I'm sorry. Forgive me for interrupting. I don't know if anyone here remembers the very first story I wrote as an intern had my initials at the end of it.
TK.
My initials are TK, which people who don't work in the publishing world may not know means to come, as in there's still information that needs to be filled in. And we got the finished issue in the office, and Elsie Kolb, our copy chief, opened the issue and freaked out because she thought something had been left out. Yeah. No, it was just a little intern's initials at the end of the story.
Yes. I have a very funny story. Oh, go ahead, Jonathan.
No, that was also the other thing that, you know, we were known for our hits and misses. And Mimi and Gabby and Linda and Katie were very encouraging about having the interns have a chance at a hit or a miss, so about voicing your opinion. And if you see something, you know, say something about it. So it wasn't just news stories. We were also encouraged to hone our critical voice, to look at things with a critical eye and praise it if need be, or to poke holes in it if we felt that it was falling short.
But I think we were pretty balanced too. Like we would say, okay, you know, we need 2 hits, 2 misses. Does anybody have a miss for this week? No, we can't do that show 2 times in a row. You know, let's watch the other show. You know, maybe we have 3 hits. We tried not to do more misses than hits, but we tried to.
Don't hit us when we're already down.
Yeah. We did a lot of critical stuff, and we really had to teach the soaps how to be criticized. Because up until that point, except I actually wrote for them their hit and miss column, nobody did criticism. So the soaps, the first time you said something, you know, critical about the soaps, they went insane. And I kept telling them, you want to be taken seriously as an art form, you have to be able to take criticism. That's just the way it is. The theater, films, art, books, everybody takes criticism. That's how you're taken seriously. And they eventually, sometimes they would still get mad. Days of Our Lives, I can't tell you how many times they cut us off, but it was okay. It was fine. We took our licks because we gave them, you know.
We probably did at some point.
You didn't cut us off.
No.
You may have kvetched, but you didn't cut us off. I have a very funny story that I want to tell, and then I'll shut up completely. But I just love this story because, first of all, it shows how innocent we were in those days, all of us, really. And what a small industry it was and how much trust there was. None of the soap magazines were rags, really. But As the World Turns, Maggie Reed's character, Shannon, came to her demise by having her head shrunk in, I think, South American jungle. Maggie and I were very good friends. And I don't know when she was coming back on the show, but I was talking, she called me one day and she says, guess what? I'm coming back to the show. I said, you're coming back to the show? You had your head shrunk. You know, it sounds like soap dish, right? But she has no head. She said, they figured it out. I'm coming back to the show. I said, well, can I, check if I can use this? She said, yeah, go ahead and check. I called Janet Storm, who was head of publicity for all the CBS shows, and I loved Janet. We had a very good relationship. And I said, "Hi, Janet, it's me." I said, "Listen, I have a question. I heard that Maggie Reed's coming back to the show." Dead silence. Mimi, I'll have to get back to you on that. So the next person to call me was Lori Queso, who was the executive producer of As the World Turns, and someone I had a relationship with. I liked him very much. He said, "Mimi, you can't use that." He said, "You can't do it because you'll kill 3 months of very intricate storyline leading up to her return." I said, "I'm happy not to use it, Lori, but if I know this, the other magazines will know this. And, we have integrity, but we can't always not do things and get scooped." He said, "Well, if I speak to all the other magazines and they agree not to do it, will you not do it?" I said, "Of course, of course." He called all the other editors, and everybody agreed not to say that Maggie was coming back. Now, really, what kind of an industry is that has that much integrity and is, communicates so well with each other, and nobody breathed a word of it, none of the magazines.
But I think that's true because we were fans, and we didn't want the story ruined. Like,
no, we didn't.
That wouldn't have been fair to the fans either.
Yes, but we had an obligation also to give our readers. They wanted scoops. We never scooped anything that would hurt a show.
Right.
But we had, the more successful we got, the more magazines came out, and there was a lot of competition at that point for now, some people bought all the magazines, but some people had to choose, between them. But we never gave anything away. Even though we got things 2 weeks in advance, we never gave anything away. We worked hand in glove with the shows. It was a very interesting symbiotic relationship that worked most of the time.
We loved Weekly on my end.
We're glad.
We loved Weekly. What were your shows growing up, Gabby? What did you watch?
Well, when I was in high school and before that, I really loved Edge of Night. And of course, there were no VCRs then. So I would have to call my mother after lunch from the payphone to see what had happened on the show. I loved that show. I loved Another World. Those, I think, were the two shows I really liked.
And for you, Kate, you watched a lot.
Well, yeah, I think I first started watching All My Children when I was in grade school, when I would come home from lunch and my grandmother would be watching Chuck and the Nurse. That's what she called it. Chuck and the Nurse is on. And I wasn't supposed to be watching it, but I was there. And, and then I just kind of slipped into watching One Life to Live. And then during middle school, everybody was talking about Luke and Laura, so I watched General Hospital. So the ABC lineup, and then Days of Our Lives, probably later in high school.
And you ended up doing an internship or being hired at All My?
I was an intern at All My Children. My junior year of college. I was in New York and I was working on a show and it was canceled. And I said, well, I know there's 6 soap operas here, so I'm just going to call the one I'd want to work at most. And I just called the production office and they needed an intern. And there I was the next day in Pine Valley. It was crazy. It's crazy.
I'm sure the fans are all mouths on the floor from that, but that is really how so much of this happened.
Yeah. And I always tell, I've been working in publishing now for 35, 36 years. And I always tell interns, I'm like, if you want something, just pick up the phone and call, because sometimes it actually works, especially now when most people don't call.
True. Mark, your shows growing up?
General Hospital. I remember Who Killed Diana Taylor. That was probably the first storyline I got hooked in. Yeah. And then Luke and Laura. And then Nikki Ricky on One Life to Live when she had a split personality. I got hooked on that. And then, interesting, at Weekly, I grew to love Guiding Light, and Young and Restless became my favorite shows. Loved it.
Now, you only started watching Guiding Light to cover it, right?
Right. I loved Reba, anything with Kim I loved, and Y&R, I loved anything with Catherine Chancellor and Jeannie Cooper. I just love both shows.
Travis?
Days was my first show. I was 13 years old. I was in the hospital for about a week. And, back then there's nothing to do but watch TV if you're stuck in the hospital. So I got hooked on Days, and that was back in their super couple heyday of Stephen Cale and Justin and Adrian and Shane and Kim and all that. And then I remember being hooked on the Riverfront Knifer story where Jack's adopted father Harper was killing all the prostitutes. And then I had Another World in Santa Barbara, and so I was NBC to start with, and then I became aware of ABC and CBS shows slowly but surely. But Days was my first.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to talk about Mimi's starring role on Generations.
It was very much fun. It was. They called me One Take Mimi, and it was really, really fun. It was very. I played someone called Mimi Harrington, and what was his name? That cute English guy.
I know, I can't think of him, and I love him from stuff.
Yes.
Anyway, I played his wife.
Ian Ogilvy.
Ian Ogilvy. I didn't play his wife.
Was his name.
Right, I played someone else. Ian came over to see about buying, I think, some kind of a vase or something. And I took to him. And my first scene was talking to him about it and everything, but my big scene was going to his hotel room and saying, oh my God. Maybe he was selling one to us, because I remember I opened my mink coat and I said, I saw your treasure, now you can see mine. And I was supposed to take my hair down, but they had made so many different hairdos that didn't work. It was so full of hairspray that when I shook it out, it just kind of stuck out a little from the sides. But it was funny. And he was like, yeah. And it was really one of my my most fun experiences.
Is that on YouTube?
Oh, it probably is. I don't think that you're on. My wife made a whole YouTube channel for me, because I did all the talk shows, and I did the Emmys for all those years. The
all
red
those
carpet.
years. Mimi, what was your show? Was it Guiding Light, and what else?
Well, I didn't watch soaps as a kid. I'm old. I'm 77 years old, and I went to school. The only time I watched soaps was when I was really young, and we barely had TVs. But my dad had a furniture store, and he used to watch As the World Turns when he wasn't busy, which unfortunately was a lot. And I used to watch as a little girl As the World Turns with him. But when I got older, I went to school. I had extracurricular activities. When I came to New York, somebody stayed with me and started me on As the World, All My Children, which I was devoted to. And then when I went to Sterling's and did a quarterly all by myself, Soap Opera's Greatest Stories and Stars, I had to watch soaps 24 hours a day to catch up. And I wrote an interview with Pam Long, that when she was on Texas, that she liked so much. When she became head writer of Guiding Light, she said, I want you to write for me. So I'm going to need us. So I began watching Guiding Light. And Guiding Light I had watched it a little bit otherwise. It just knocked me out. And I became a deep, deep fan and loved Guiding Light. I didn't become a writer. It's a story in its own. There might have been no Soap Opera Weekly with Mimi Torchin at the head if I had made the right answer to Gail Colby, the question she asked me. But I didn't, and I didn't get the job. Yeah, it was just. I came in for an interview, and she said, okay, what show do you watch? I said, what's your favorite show? I said, well, there's the Guiding Light, All My Children. She says, what do you like best? What is it that makes it so great? I said, well, the characters. They're so fantastic. And she said, no, it's not the characters. It's the storylines. And I said, well, all of the best storylines come out of character. Well, thank you very much. It was very nice meeting you, and that was it. I was done.
Connie says, thanks, Mimi, for always letting me say the truth, no matter how much trouble that caused. How did Marlena come to the magazine?
Did she pitch it to us? I don't remember. She was in the ether as a soap writer, and we had our two gossip columns. We had Janet DeLauro in L.A., who was also our L.A. editor, and we had Pat Sellers in New York, and we had my critical column.
Wow. Blast from the past. Thank you.
Yes. And I think she pitched this story. And I don't know who, I think we came up with the idea of Marlena Delacroix.
Probably
And a friend-
Freeman.
Yeah, and Freeman came up, Freeman called a friend of his who did a drawing of her that looked like Gypsy Rose Lee. He always says that she looked like Gypsy Rose Lee. And that's how it happened.
Wow.
Now, at the time, Connie was writing for Episodes, which was an ABC magazine.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And
right.
there was
Episode.
something where she couldn't have her own byline
Right.
in both magazines, or she wasn't telling them. So
Yeah.
that's where the idea.
Marlena Delacroix.
Oh, yeah, the pseudonym, yeah.
And the rest is history.
I think Jonathan went with that, actually. I think
To say the least. To say the least. Jonathan, what shows were yours? And before I let you go, also share what you're doing today. Everybody would love to know.
My shows growing up were the shows that my parents watched. My father had a home office and watched Young and the Restless when it premiered. And my mother was Ryan's Hope, All My Children, Another World, and then GH. So those were the shows. Then once I got a little older, my cousin Sandy got me into World Turns and Guiding Light.
And that's where you fell in love with Ms. Zank?
That's where I fell. Hi, Colleen. That's where I fell in love with Miss Zank. Yes.
Yeah. So please, everybody, Jonathan, what are you doing today?
I just moved back to Los Angeles a few days ago. I'm working for a company called Citizen Skull, representing below the line talent, which is cameramen, editors, script supervisors, and I'm also representing voiceover talent. One of my clients is a soap actor. No one here knows that. And another client is also a soap writer.
All right. Can you share who they are?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, okay. So the actor is Stephen Nichols, and the writer is Victor Miller.
Nice.
Good.
I loved speaking to Victor Miller.
Yes, we were on a panel, you and I together, a million years ago.
Yes, he told me, I think that you brought that up. I didn't remember that.
Yeah, a million years ago at Quinnipiac College.
That's
He's
crazy.
a cool guy.
Crazy. Gabby, you?
I'm the communications manager for a very small care facility in Riverdale, New York.
Nice. And Kate?
I'm the editor-in-chief of Our Detroit magazine, which is the city magazine for
Big deal.
Detroit, Metro Detroit.
And Mark's actually in touch, right?
Yeah, executive editor in Touch Weekly, where I work with Katie again briefly.
Yeah, I work there after Weekly. Yeah.
What's been your favorite interview there, Mark?
I just edit and write there. I don't do reporting or interviews.
Oh, okay.
But their lives are crazier than the soap opera characters, the celebrities. So
and most of it's true. That was the crazy thing.
It's all true. We'd be sued if it wasn't true.
It was like if it says a source close to Paris Hilton, it was Paris Hilton. It was just.
And there were things we can't print that are even worse than, crazier than what's in the magazine.
I mean, we see enough on the news. I don't doubt it. I do not doubt it's true. Travis, yourself?
I'm actually, shockingly to me, I just marked 20 years here in Dallas-Fort Worth, longer than I've lived anywhere else. And I'm a part-time editor for Stanford University, editing their alumni magazine. And then I also freelance copy edit a couple of other magazines here locally.
Do you anybody still watch soaps?
I've watched Colleen on Young and the Restless, and I watch General Hospital most days.
Can we talk about that actually for a minute? I mean, what that did, the excitement to see for somebody who'd been off the air for like 12 or 13 years with Colleen. I mean, it was everywhere.
Young and Restless.
Yeah.
And the fact that they were smart enough to, NDA, nobody knew. It was.
That's my husband. Very few things in the world of soaps or even in the world are shocking. And I was actually out in Los Angeles, and I had been talking to Colleen and to Vivian Gundaker, who's now a producer at Young and the Restless, and no one told me, why should they tell me? But it's like I was talking to these people and no one mentioned Colleen's going to be on the air tomorrow. So it was a big shock.
That's amazing. And Mimi, what are you doing? Enjoying yourself these days?
I am retired and I'm happy as a clamato. I mean, I took up watercolor during COVID. I haven't painted for the last couple of months. I had COVID and it I kind of lost my mojo for a bit. But I love being at my house and, tinkering in the garden and taking care of my critters. I still watch a lot of television. I am a television addict. And I've had offers to write things. I don't want to work. I've worked enough. I really am lazy. Soap Opera Weekly was the greatest, most exciting 11 years of my professional life. It was just everything that anybody could have wanted. It was hard. I had to please a lot of people. I had to please my bosses. I had to please the soap people. I had to please the actors. I had to please my staff, and I had to please the readers. And the buck stopped with me. And so there was a lot of stress, but it was glorious fun and glamorous. And I did a lot of television. I loved doing the red carpet for the daytime Emmys. That was such a thrill. And I made a lot of friends, and it was a great time. And when I was done, I worked for SoapNet a little while, but I'm happy not working. Very happy.
What are you watching? Anything you want to recommend to folks?
Hacks.
Oh my God. So good.
My God. Even if you don't have HBO or Max, get it.
Yeah.
And watch all the seasons.
These last 2 episodes were hysterical.
Blew my mind. The show, since ER, which is my favorite show, this is my favorite show. I watch a lot of TV, and there's a lot of it, and I have a lot of streaming services. I watch a lot of British stuff. I watched a lot of Danish noir. Robert and I couldn't wait to call him and let him know that I'd seen Anjer's Hove on some Danish noir thing. And he had seen it, of course. He knew all about it. But I think if I had to recommend one thing, it would be Hacks. It's just a brilliantly written, fantastically acted. It's kind of a love story. It really is when you think about it. And it's hilarious. That is my recommendation. I watch so much TV that I can't even think of what else to tell you.
We're the same way, but we just started Tom Pelphrey's season 2 of Outer Range, which is
I just started the season 2 of Outer Range. I forgot that he's in it. Yes, I can't wait to see it. I just watched half of the first episode.
Josh Brolin. It's a really good, interesting
it's a wild show. Lily Taylor.
Yeah.
Oh, Hacks. She's brilliant.
Yeah.
She's phenomenal. Yeah. It's a great show.
Well, everybody, it's so great to see you all. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Alan.
Well, you had a ton of your colleagues were watching. I couldn't read everything, but they were all sending their love your way.
Oh, nice.
Will we be able to see that if we go on to the YouTube?
Yeah.
Does the chat run? Oh, that'll be fun.
It will. Yeah. Here, you know what? I'm going to take a picture of us all. Give me 1 second. I'll count us down. Fix your hair. Put your makeup on. Everybody sit up straight. 1, 2, and 3. Let's see if everybody's eyes are open.
Oh, I look terrible.
I'm going to do one more. I think somebody's eyes were closed. So we'll do one more.
Oh, I lost you.
1, 2. Nope, just smile. 1, 2, 3. Well done. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Love you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you to Mimi, Mark, Travis, Jonathan, Kate, and Gabby for spending the hour and sharing their memories with all of us. Please join me tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern when director and co-writer James Cullen Brasic and actress Kristana Loken from the new film Darkness of Man stop by. You may remember Kristana, who played Danny Andropoulos on As the World Turns, was one of her first roles. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. Turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And if you like today's episode, please click the like button. It always helps. And remember, if you like audio versions, you can stream The Locker Room on your favorite podcast app. Have a great evening, everybody. Stay safe, and I'll see you tomorrow.